All right.
Parents just don't understand.
Yeah, so let's start this off. Welcome back to the Beast Game Podcast. It's 2018. And today we're going to take a look at Bright from Netflix. It's directed by David Ayer. The writer is Max Landis. And it stars everybody's favorite, Will Smith, Joel Edgerton, and Noomi Rapace. And the synopsis is, set in a world where fantasy creatures live side by side with humans, a human cop is forced to work with an orc to find a weapon that everyone is prepared to kill for. So, Keith, this is right up your alley. What did you think of Bright?
I thought Bright was a fine example
you are an idiot. You are an idiot. You are an idiot. I knew you were going to do this to me. I knew it. All right, go ahead.
Bright, it's a premise that seems to work well on paper, but in truth, it's been done before. I saw what they were trying to do with Bright, and unfortunately, it looked like he was remaking his movie End of Watch, but throwing some elves and dragons in it. And honestly, didn't work well in a movie kind of experience. It probably would have done better if it was a TV series. The one thing I liked about it, I like the Alien Nation vibe to it. Got the new partner and who's unpopular, racial makeup, but it didn't seem to work too well. And I will say this, and I'm not joking, I thought probably the best thing about the movie was Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. Had they done something other than the fantasy aspects, it might have worked a little better. If they'd have delved a little differently, a little more in depth on the actual world itself, this one world building, it probably would have done better. But this kind of like, you're giving pieces of what the world is all about. It seemed rushed, and it was just a lot of stuff going on that didn't make sense. You kind of had to use your own imagination. It just didn't work out too well. So I was not a huge fan of it. I'll probably watch the sequel to it just to see it. And other than that, as a huge fantasy fan, and I like Will Smith, I like Joel Edgerton as well. But this wasn't the winner that I would expect it to be.
All right, Jay.
Well, first, this movie reminded me of so many other movies, and like he said, this has all been done before. It reminded me of Alien Nation, and also it kind of reminded me of I, Robot somewhat. Also, because of Will Smith playing in it, because kind of got to piggyback off of Barry on this one. Will Smith has very limited acting range, because this is basically Dale Spooner, Deadshot, Robert Neville, and Mike Lowry all rolled up into one person. That by itself was kind of a negative. I like the aspect of the fantasy world, everything mixed in, so that was kind of cool. This kind of reminded me of Lord of the Rings, just in a modern day setting. So that's actually not a bad thing. I thought this movie would have been served better as a television show instead of a movie, because there's a lot of things that really didn't make sense. Also, like how this movie some correlated with real-time events, with racism and all that. So that was a nice little twist. I liked it, but there were a lot of things that I had issues with.
All right, Mike.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Jay and Keith a bit, and this might be a little all over the place, but it's 2018, and in the epic words of Barry, Kansas City Royals, don't matter if I hit or miss, bitch. Number one, I will say now, this was better than Suicide Squad. That's just my first opinion on it. Two, all right, Barry disagrees. Two, like he said, this could have benefited greatly to explain what this world was. Started off very slow and was kind of confusing, trying to figure out what exactly was going on with this whole world and this environment. And then it got to the point where it finally made sense. Three, I think it benefited greatly from going straight to Netflix and not being put in a movie theater, because it would have bombed terribly.
Definitely.
It failed.
Big time.
Like Jay said, Will Smith to me basically was just Mike Lowry again, which is usually the case whenever he plays a cop. I did think the movie was decent. It was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. I honestly fell asleep at one point, but my wife kind of pointed out I think I fell asleep on the boringest part of the movie, because when I woke up, it was kind of moving along at a fast pace, and then I was kind of into the movie at that point.
One thing, that the movie in the beginning was very, very slow.
Yeah.
It started picking up probably in the second act. That's when it really started getting interesting, and more so the very beginning, trying to set the tone of the world around us. Basically how they establish who's in charge, who is not in charge, like just the relations going on in this world. That's what this whole thing was setting up. And so that's why it was kind of slow for me. I don't know if anyone else felt the same way.
My problem was it picked up once they stopped trying to explain the world and you just got to the meat of it. And that's namely when the elves popped in and started fucking everything up. I was like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah, when
that's
they got
why they
to
ran
that
the
point,
show.
it started getting real decent. And I was like, okay, I can actually sit here and enjoy this.
Well, let me get into my comments. And I'm going to start off with the negatives because there's a lot of negatives about this.
Of course.
The first negative is just the inherent idea of this. Why would someone mix Training Day, Warcraft, and Alien Nation together?
This might work.
Huh?
Because there's a lack of creativity in Hollywood, so you just take stuff that's already been done and try to come up with some new thing.
So this whole movie is like a bad cosplay with Will Smith smack dab in the center. The big, but hold on, I'm gonna give Will Smith some credit. He's not the worst thing about this movie. This movie, first of all, tonally kind of started off somewhat trying to be serious, but it should have just been a straight up comedy movie.
Right.
And not some somewhat serious fantasy action chase escort movie.
Thank you. Sorry. Barry, I'm with you. This movie doesn't know what it wanted to be.
Yeah.
It has no idea. It's so lost. Like it's Lord of the Rings.
So getting into all that, the plot threads. So you have Will Smith coming back to work after getting shot. He wants to retire. He has a daughter. His daughter's disappointed in him for some reason. Can't trust his partner. His partner's under investigation. There's crooked cops. There's internal affairs. There's magic feds. The magic wand. The neighborhood gangs. The orc gang. The Bright. The elf ninjas. The orcs are rite of passage.
And not to mention my favorite part of the whole movie. Remember when Will Smith, right? He was just like, hey, call his wife, like, look, grab Sophia or whatever his daughter's name is and get the hell out of here.
His family disappears right in the middle of the movie.
Happens right in the middle of the movie. After that, you don't see nothing. You don't hear nothing. You don't know what the hell happened.
Well, it takes place in one
why
night,
even
right?
mention that?
It's fine. Okay. And there's a lot of terrible dialogue in this movie. That's the next problem.
Yeah, the writing was pretty bad.
Did anyone notice that in almost every scene, someone's telling someone to shut up or
Shut
stop
the fuck
talking?
up. Yep.
Yes.
That was like the tagline of the movie.
You know what? Shut the fuck up. That was a damn plot device that moved the story along because it started off with saying, don't tell him to shut the fuck up. It all built up to that shit, man.
So the pacing and the ending. So the ending takes the happenstance hook from Training Day, where the most insignificant thing that a character did turns out to be the biggest important part of the movie. Problem with that is that it's already been done before. It's already been done before twice by this director. You also have the middle of the movie is just boring. And
Fuck.
the ending is just a letdown. So David Ayer has made 3 of my favorite movies. Involved in writing Training Day. He directed End of Watch. He directed Fury. And then one of my most hated movies, Suicide Squad. And the next negative, I still haven't got to my positives yet, is Will Smith cannot act. He cannot act. He's subpar in this movie. Again, he's a father. He has a porn stash. As James mentioned, his family just disappears in the middle of the movie. And he's just basically playing Will Smith that can curse. He can't act because there's one line in this movie where he tries to put some gravitas on it. He tries to put some oomph in it. He was just like,
Yeah, I think you're about to say it. Go ahead.
I got bodies on my gun.
Yeah. I have to piggyback off of Barry. I have to agree with him 100%.
Say it with some conviction. Like, I got bodies on my gun.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I mean, Will Smith, I don't have a problem with Will Smith as Barry does, but his acting was very subpar. This movie would have been better as a TV show.
Yeah. So let me just say my positives, and I'll get these out of the way. Super quick. Joel Edgerton seems to be like enjoying himself. Numi Rapace, the Elf Ninjas, because they were actually pretty good. Like Cleavebone Sloan is in this movie. He has to be in every David Ayer movie except for Fury. There's the iconic areas of LA, and there's a Snoop Dogg song. And that's my only positives about this movie.
I think that Will Smith he's a good actor. Can only work with the material he's been given.
Okay.
And I think
So hold on. If you want to take that track, Will Smith needs to fire his agent. Because whose agent would tell you to sign on to a movie like this that, hey, well, you'll be playing a police officer in LA. Oh, yeah, great. With an orc? Like, what's the orc?
That's not what he signed on to do, Barry. He signed on to do a David Ayer movie.
No, he signed on to play a fantasy cop with an orc partner with all these plot threads and this dumb dialogue about a magic wand.
The biggest issue with the film is that basically they try to cram 2,000 years of history into a 90-minute movie. which take place over the course of 24 hours. The whole big premise is that these elves, ninjas are trying to do something to some event that took place 2,000 years in the world's history. And the idea, the novel idea, the hook to the whole thing is that what if that stuff that happened in Lord of the Rings actually happened? And this is Earth 2,000 years later in modern time. In the end, that's what the twist, that's what the hook is.
Keith, honestly, I think the movie could have benefited with what you just said being in a paragraph at the very beginning. Two paragraphs that appear.
Yeah, I agree.
I read that, and then they could have got straight to it, and the movie would have been even better.
Yeah.
Give them some context.
Yeah, going on about why is magic a bad thing? And it's kind of like they're treating it like it's radioactive and stuff. It's like, what?
Like it's corruptible and shit.
And then you got, why is it that, in this day and age, and James, you mentioned something about how it kind of took what's going on today with racism and everything. It's basically non-humans versus humans in this. So how is it that the elves are the ones running every damn thing? And how is it that like regular Joe Blow humans are okay with that? It looked like they were trying to take that Tolkien stuff and kind of mash it into a modern day cop drama. And it just didn't work out without the context behind it. Mike, you said like a paragraph or a blurb or something that's going to put us in that setting and everything. Instead, we're kind of drop kicked into it. You got him trying to get rid of a fairy digging in through the bird feeder or whatever. And I'm like, that's just all kinds of weird. You got a dragon flying around and over LA. You're like, what the heck? I mean, it could be cool, but at the same time, it just didn't kind of work out. I mean, at the very least, they could have done a Harry Potter type deal, kind of make the shit hidden or somewhere. I don't know. In the end, I think the entire premise of itself wasn't executed well enough. And I don't even think David Ayer knew what he was trying to play on. I mean, the entire movie itself felt like there's End of Watch. And I didn't even get through that whole movie, but that seems like the exact same premise from End of Watch.
End of Watch is a great movie. That's all I can say.
I mean, I think it feels like a lot of other stuff going on with Hollywood, period, where it seems like somebody got some crazy idea, tossed a bunch of money at somebody, and they just said, fuck it, we'll make the movie. Don't really care about the product, just make it and see what it does.
The interesting thing about it is that this premise has been done before. Like, There's a movie called Catch a Spell or something. Anyway, the premise of that was it was a detective to find out about a murder. And the catch was that he was in LA in the 50s and magic was around. So, unicorns.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And, people, that there was a unicorn in a garden, and it was like you kind of knew the guy had to talk to a witch, but you can't look her in the eye or something like that. It was like little fairy tale tropes that you knew about, but he had to kind of circumvent, but it was still the same thing. It was a 50s gumshoe murder mystery that you had to solve. And it worked. It worked on all the levels. The magic aspect was just that. It was just another little twist to everything going around. But in the end, it was the story that told the tale. In this case, this story was all over the place.
Like I said before, it had no clue what it wanted to be. I thought it was going to be like some type of crime drama between the races, something like I said, Alienation. I thought it was going to be something like Alienation. Then it started looking like Lord of the Rings with all the magic and fairies and all this other stuff. Like you mentioned something about End of Watch. I haven't seen End of Watch, but from what I've been told, its content is very similar to this as well. And it also reminded me of an escort movie, which Barry mentioned earlier. Just an escort movie protecting the elf and the wand from everyone. And it reminds me of this one movie that many people may have not seen in a long time or don't even remember. This movie called Judgment Night. I mean, it just had that feel to it. Like everybody was after them. Orcs were after them. Gangs were after them. Everybody was just after them all over the place. And that's just what it was. An escort movie. It had multiple personality disorders because they didn't know what the hell they wanted to be at all.
But you know what the problem was? Is that I think I would have gotten behind the whole escort aspect of it if I knew from the beginning what a magic wand could do.
Right.
Like, he's saying it's a wand. I'm like, what, like Harry Potter? I'm like, big fucking deal.
What you guys have been saying is that this would have benefited from being a TV show where, hey, if we had a pilot, episode 0 would be explanation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And why are magic wands banned? Why are people, whole neighborhoods and gangs searching for magic wands?
They already have a TV show out like this somewhat. Once Upon a Time and all that. I mean, it works. They could have done this easily. It probably would have worked out a lot better. And I think if they were to make this a TV show, shouldn't have had Will Smith in it in the beginning. Could have used another actor. Probably a better movie.
James, what you just said is the most powerful words that have ever been spoken on the Beast Game podcast.
Will Smith is fine.
Like I said, I don't have a problem with Will Smith, but it just seemed like he didn't bring nothing to the movie.
No, this is what I think the issue is with him, at least for me. He made it very well known that he wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, that he wanted to get an Oscar, wanted to be ranked as one of the best actors out there. In every movie, it seems like he is the same exact character, no matter the film.
Right. He basically did all his characters from previous movies in this one movie. He was Del Spooner from iRobot that had a grudge against robots because of something that happened to him dealing with the robot. He had a problem with his partner, which was an orc, just because of how society is. He was Deadshot. He was knows that he was Deadshot too because he was good with the weapon. He was good with firearms in this, and they kept reiterating that. He was Robert Neville, and he tried to be serious. And then at points, he was like Mike Lowry. Like we mentioned before, and it's just not just harping on Will Smith. We talked about acting before. Mike, you said it. When Denzel Washington was playing the character in Fences, you knew he was that character. He didn't act like the person from Training Day. You could tell the difference.
And the problem, again, is his charisma. The way people write for him, they write for his charisma because he has no acting skill. He just takes on whatever role that he has already done in order to get the movie done.
So let me ask you a question, Barry. Who do you feel is a better actor, him or The Rock?
That's an interesting question, Jay. And sorry to interrupt, Barry, because my wife actually talked about that because we had this debate in this issue.
Go ahead and answer the question, Mike.
Is the same character in every film.
I would say The Rock is more believable in the movies that he's been in. If I take The Rock from Walking Tall and The Rock from Pain and Gain, I don't see the same person.
What about in Fast and the Furious?
It's the same character.
I would say Fast and the Furious and G.I. Joe, he's basically the same person.
And Jumanji?
I would say not.
Jumanji's the one time I say he's been different. And that's based on the writing and the concept of the film.
Yeah.
No, hold on. What about that movie with Kevin Hart?
Well, he's...
What, with the CIA agent?
Yep.
Same thing. He's the
Yeah,
same
he was
character.
just-
But,
well, he was
but
just
if you
like,
see The Rock in Ballers, he's basically a different person.
Yeah, he's like
yeah, I've heard in the
Yeah, but I mean, Ball is a TV show, so I'm not even going to count that in this. Like, movie-wise, I think he does do the same character. I think for me, he hadn't come out and said, hey, I want to be one of the best actors and I want to win an award. He was basically like, I just want to make blockbusters at a shitload of money.
he knows his lane.
Like, I'm not expecting him to be Gary Oldman when I see him. I'm just expecting The Rock.
But I would give
Okay,
The Rock more credit than Will Smith.
And why is that?
Because The Rock's charisma carries more weight.
Is it that you like The Rock more than Will Smith, or is it like...
Well, I just said that. The Rock's charisma carries more weight. So I would give The Rock more credit acting than I would Will Smith. The Rock is a better actor. 100% a better actor than Will Smith.
Well, let me ask you this. Think he'll win an Oscar before Will Smith?
I doubt either one of them would win an Oscar.
But if it was possible.
He's not going to win an Oscar. The Rock, the people's champ.
You think all his experience acting for wrestling has a lot to do with why he's good as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, because that is just scripted TV. Let's get the scores. All right. So, Keith, Fantasy Man.
I'll give it a solid 5. I mean, I would hope that if they tried it again, that they would.
Well, they are going to try it again.
Yes,
Probably like-
already
I mean,
greenlit a sequel.
I'll watch the sequel, but I wouldn't rewatch this movie again. So I'll give it a 5.
Oh, they greenlit the sequel with Will Smith?
Yes.
Yeah, they greenlit the sequel before the movie even premiered on Netflix. They had already ordered the sequel.
Let me guess, because of Will Smith.
I don't understand who's running Netflix right now, but you might want to reconsider your options. Iron Fist, cancel that show. But go ahead, Keith.
It wasn't absolutely horrible, but at the same time, the execution was a little off. And now that there's some backstory to it, I think the sequel might do a little bit better. Hopefully. There was some good inside of it. Aside from flaws, I wouldn't watch it again. It's enough for me to watch the sequel and everything. That's about it.
All right, Jay.
I give this movie a 5 as well. There were some good things about this movie. I kind of like the idea of what they were trying to do with it, give you different perspective on things. But there were too many plot holes, reminded me of too many other movies. Certain things didn't make sense. There was no context behind it, and the acting wasn't that great. But I like the potential of where the story could have gone. And I mean, that's about it. It could have been a way better television show instead of a movie. I give it a 5.
All right, Mike.
I'll give it a 5 as well. Like I said, I think if it had more context, they wouldn't have wasted so much time trying to build up to what exactly was going on, what the purpose was, and just got straight down to it. I think it would have been a far more enjoyable movie. Like he said, I think I'll watch the sequel. I don't know if I'll watch this one again other than to probably see the parts that I fell asleep on. Like I said, I mean, it was decent. Like I said, once it got going, I enjoyed it a bit, so I'll give it a 5.
Yeah, the second act picked it up for me. If it wasn't for the second act, I probably would have.
That's when Elf Ninjas come out. But for me, so I give this movie a 3.5. Despite my dislike of Will Smith, he is the least of this movie's problems. Again, it's the writing and just the overall screenplay. The idea of this movie is bad. If you want to see a better chase movie, you should probably go watch Logan, because you kind of have similar concepts where there's a special person. Everybody wants to kill that special person to capture them. Logan is miles beyond this movie. And Will Smith is a terrible actor. And this is the Beast Game Podcast 2018. Parents just don't understand.